Thor Ragnarok. So here we are with like the 50 millionth MCU movie, the third Thor movie, but with this one we got a new director in Taika Waititi. He's done Hunt for the Wilder People. He's probably most famously known for What We Do in the Shadows, which came out a couple years ago, which was absolutely awesome. Yeah. So Nate, let's just start off with this, Thor, Chris Hemsworth coming back to play Thor, but this time he's got a new director, and Taika Waititi brought some style to it. What'd you think?
Yeah, I think that this was a much needed refreshment of the Thor series in general. I don't think people find Thor to be their favorite character in the MCU, and I think it's because of his first two movies, which in my opinion were pretty weak.
Yeah.
And I just think that this one, it needed that refreshment. You got movies like Iron Man and the new Spider-Man Homecoming and Guardians of the Galaxy, and these things have so much personality and color, and they injected that into this movie, and I think it's probably its strongest asset.
Yeah, definitely. Taika Waititi, he is a comedy director. I mean, besides those movies we mentioned, he directed many episodes of Flight of the Conchords with his collaborator, Jermaine Clement. Yeah. And he definitely brought his comedy to this one. I would say this is like this is probably like the funniest Marvel movie since the first Guardians, I would say.
Yeah, I would say that as
well. A lot of laughs in this one. And also, he brought like an 80s kind of synth sound to it. Yeah. Mark Mothersbaugh did the score for this one. And you can tell that it kind of had like an 80s throwback feel, almost video game-ish.
Yeah, it did. It was a lot of synthesizers, and they kept a little bit... There were certain scenes where it was the original Thor score that was in there. Yeah. But that was for his planet of Asgard. But when they're on this planet, which is like a garbage planet almost...
It looks like WALL-E almost.
Yeah, it looks like a WALL-E planet kind of. When they're on this planet, that's pretty much the music you get is that synth. And which adds even more to this style. And luckily, it's just not a bland-looking movie. This is a colorful, fun, I would say pretty fast-paced movie as well. It keeps going at a pretty brisk pace.
Yeah. There aren't many lulls in this movie.
No.
And it does really move right along. And let's just talk about the performances. I mean, Chris Hemsworth, I think we can agree, he's awesome as Thor.
He is.
And Tom Hiddleston is even better as Loki.
The best MCU villain, bar none.
Yeah. Well, with this one, we got some new ones. We new actors playing new roles. We have Cate Blanchett playing the villain Hela. Yeah. Jeff Goldblum playing the Grand Master. Tessa Thompson's playing Valkyrie. So, who stood out and like who were you kind of sour on amongst these new performers?
I like Tessa Thompson quite a bit. I thought she held her own with this whole thing. I think that they injected a little bit more of a investment in her character in this. You care about her. She has a reason for where she is, which I think is important. She's just not a side character. She actually, I think you care about her, and she forms relationships that are believable. Jeff Goldblum, he's just Goldblum, man.
Right, and that's something like I was definitely got with this movie that I have with his movies of the past few years. It's just like the director's like, we don't need to direct Jeff Goldblum. Just do your thing, man. Yeah. Be you. Get tons of laughs. Yeah. Even he makes non-funny moments hilarious because he's just Jeff Goldblum.
It's really weird that his screen presence is so prominent. When he's on screen, you're having a good time watching this movie. One of the weaker aspects, I will say, is Cate Blanchett. And it's not because I don't like Cate Blanchett. I just thought, once again, she falls into a pretty weak MCU villain.
Yeah, it's just the same old thing. Marvel's just got a villain problem. I mean, Loki's been their one standout. Yeah. Hopefully Thanos, Josh Brolin in the Infinity War is coming up. Hopefully that will change the trend. But once again, it's just kind of the villains aren't menacing. They don't really pose a real threat. Even though this villain's like one of the most powerful villains in the MCU. Yeah. It's still not very threatening, not very menacing or intimidating. And especially it's Cate Blanchett. You'd expect more. She didn't exactly give a bad performance, just that these villains are so poorly written.
Yeah, and Loki obviously set the bar because of his charisma, and there's just no charisma with this villain. I did like that they added, it was a faceless army that she has, but there's reason why this army exists. So I liked how she summoned her army and where they came from, at least had a backstory to it. Right. But they still ended up being a pretty faceless enemy.
Right. And that folds into, which is my big complaint about this movie. It's my big complaint about most Marvel movies, that the third act is incredibly similar.
It is.
Faceless army, the hero learns something about himself, a sacrifice is made, everybody goes off happy. It's just, once again, it's going through the motions, I think, with the third act. I really wish with these Marvel movies they do something that stands out a little bit.
Yeah, and this one they did. They kept with that same third act tropes.
Right.
But let's talk about the Hulk. I was excited about the Hulk.
I was very excited about the Hulk, and actually, this movie is almost, I'd say it's equally Thor and Hulk.
Yeah. Thor takes the beginning, but once Hulk's in there, he's in there.
Right, and I think you learn more about Hulk in this one than you do about Thor. I mean, Thor, his thing has always been that, he feels burdened with this responsibility to eventually be the king of Asgard. Yeah. And by the end, he embraces that. But, with Hulk, you kind of learn that the Hulk talks more in this one than the Hulk, not just Bruce Banner, the actual Hulk talks in any of them. And you learn it really is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when it comes to the Hulk.
Yeah, his character has evolved as the Hulk, of course. And yeah, he almost feels like he has a purpose on this planet. He belongs there, and he's this glorified warrior that everyone looks up to. So he kind of, in Hulk's mind, wants to stay, but there's no real... there's this line that Bruce Banner uses where he's like, I feel like sometimes I had one hand on the wheel when I was the Hulk, but now I feel like I'm locked in the trunk. Like, the Hulk is him more than he is Bruce Banner. So I think they did a great job with the Hulk, the relationship between Thor and Hulk, which is, once again, we're going to carry out this theme. This movie is funny.
Yeah.
This movie is very, very funny.
Great banter between Thor and Hulk, and then eventually when he turns back into Bruce Banner. And the thing I liked about this one is that Taika Waititi played with the superhero tropes.
Yeah.
Like, there's the part in the Avengers where the Hulk's like, well, I'm always angry. He just instantly turns into the Hulk. There's a scene like that in this one, but it's funnier. The execution's great. And it's one of those, it defied expectations in moments like that, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I think that the comedic timing, that's the one thing. This movie has a little bit, you can tell that they're shifting. From the other Thor movies, it's very serious. I always feel like Thor's a very serious character, is what I always got out of him. And then once Avengers came out, he started to lighten up a little bit and have some funnier lines. But in this, it seems like it's really switched, and that really, the tone was a little bit jarring for me. I did laugh. I thought it was really, really funny, but I just felt like the funniness took the front seat a little too often.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you about the tone being jarring. There's the two different storylines that eventually come to a head at the end. And on one side you got Thor and what's going on with him and this junk planet. And it's hilarious. It's lighthearted. Then you cut back to Hela on Asgard and her taking over. It's very dark. So I don't think they mixed the sweet and the sour too well. They just kept them completely separate.
Yeah, and the characters so well, they're normally very, intense, and Thor's a very intense character. Mm-hmm. And, with Star-Lord, you met him that way. He's always been a jokester, a shyster, a clumsy kind of guy. But all of a sudden, it felt like just immediately Thor, right off the first scene, which I think was one of my favorite scenes, but it just was really, he was so quirky and funny and Star-Lordy. I'm like, this doesn't feel like Thor that much.
Yeah, and I think that just attributes to the inconsistent tone. Yeah. But I did like the laughs, and I like that Taika Waititi even gave himself a little role in there. I mean, it was all voiceover.
One of my favorites, actually.
Yeah, he really stood out.
Yeah, there was also just some great cameos. I'm not going to spoil any cameos.
No, we're not spoiling. The cameos in this one, it's hilarious.
It is.
I'll say that 90% of the jokes in this movie fell.
Yeah.
Or landed. And that one is the one that had everybody laughing in this hilarious cameo. Actually, a couple cameos, but
quite a
pretty
few
funny.
Cameos. But I thought through and through this movie was wholly entertaining, very colorful, and a much needed change of pace for the Thor series.
Indeed. Buffs. All right, I think it's fair to say we both had a good time with this movie. Definitely a much needed change of pace for Marvel. So why don't you go ahead and put a score on this one?
All right, I enjoyed my time with Thor Ragnarok. It's easily, by leaps and bounds, the strongest in the Thor series, and one of the stronger of the Marvels. It suffers from that third act lull a little bit, but other than that, I think that it's a great movie to go enjoy in the theater. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one as well, and the third act did kind of, bog down for me, but it's also one of those things where it's like, what else can they do?
Yeah.
I challenge them to find something new to do, because the third act is just kind of getting boring and repetitive, but they did change up the style with this one. They made Thor a little bit more funny, a little bit more easygoing, and Taika Waititi, I think he did a fantastic job. This is easily the biggest movie he's ever made, and I think he really nailed it. I'm going right there with you. I'm going to give Thor Ragnarok an 8 out of 10. Enjoy this one, and don't let the first two Thor movies put you off. This one's much needed change of pace.
Yeah, go see it in the theater. It's a good time.
Buffs.
Alright, so that's our review of Thor Ragnarok. What do you guys think of Thor? What do you think of the MCU? Leave all your comments below. Also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We appreciate all the support.
And be sure to join us next week when we review the remake of Murder on the Orient Express, brought to you by the original Thor director, Kenneth Branagh. A lot of, it's a pretty big cast. We'll see how he handles it. We'll bring you that review next Friday, but until then, don't forget,
there's no place like the theater.